Hey everyone, thanks for tuning back in to Dietitians and Nutrition Support. My name is Lauren, and today I'll be talking through more of our enteral nutrition series, focusing on a patient who has a fluid restriction during their full enteral nutrition support. So if you're wondering about those calculations, don't forget to stay tuned to the rest of this video. And if you haven't already, please don't forget to subscribe to our channel so you can get all of our latest updates and video posts. If you have any comments, questions, or recommendations for future videos, don't forget to leave them in the comments box below. Let's get started.
Our patient for today is a woman named Mrs. K. She's 82 years old, 5'3", and 160 pounds. As you can see here from her weight and her height, she is slightly overweight, and that will come into play as we choose what kinds of calorie needs she has. She is noted to have heart failure with pericardial effusion. This means that her heart is not working very well, and the pericardial effusion is indicating that she has fluid starting to accumulate in the pericardial space surrounding the heart. This fluid accumulation can cause additional pressure on the heart and decrease the heart's function even further. Most patients with pericardial effusion are likely indicated to have a fluid restriction. And for this patient in particular, we'll see a fluid restriction of 1.5 liters per day. As for why she's on an enteral feed, we'll see that she has inadequate oral intake. It's noted that she can swallow, so she can likely tolerate little bits of oral feeding, but not enough to really fully supply her needs for the day. Her noted method for enteral feeds is through a PEG tube. It says that she has this percutaneous endoscopic gastrostomy tube, which feeds directly to the stomach, and she's dependent on it at a continuous feed rate. That will help us to make recommendations today for a formula that's suitable, that will also go at a continuous rate. The first step of this process today is going to be determining our patient's needs. One of the most important aspects of needs is going to be the overall kcals or energy that we provide to this woman. Being that we're providing her enough kcals to ensure that she can heal adequately during her time in the hospital, as well as noting that we did indicate that she was a touch bit overweight. We want to kind of find a nice balance in between to ensure that she has just enough but not too much calories as she stays with us. As we've noted before, there are a few ways to determine how much energy we should provide to each of our patients. The first option was the indirect calorimetry, which is one of those options that's a little more expensive and not as reasonable to do very consistently with all of your patients. But if it's an option, it is certainly a very accurate way to determine energy needs. Our other option there is a predictive equation, and those come in multiple different forms depending on your patient's disease state. But for this patient, I tried to give a nice ballpark range that would be a suitable amount of kcals without being too much for her. So my estimations today put me at 1,500 to 1,700 kcals per day. The other portion of needs is going to be protein. We always want to provide our patients with enough protein to sustain their lean tissue and also continue to heal. For this particular patient, I was looking at the grams per kilogram body weight when I was providing their needs today, but you may do that in a little bit different way, just depending on your own clinical judgment, as you would do for the entirety of the needs category. For my estimations today, that put our patient at 70 to 85 grams per day. The second part of this process is going to be formula choice. As each of our patients are very different, we have plenty of formula choices to choose from to ensure that they have the best possible formula that we can provide for them. A few bits and pieces that you may need to consider while you're choosing a formula for your patient includes GI function, ensuring that all different pieces of their GI tract are working appropriately, or indicating which pieces may not be able to do their job quite as adequately as normal will help you to select a formula that's suitable to them. Another aspect of formula choice is disease state. If your patient has a very particular disease state, they may also have a particular formula for that patient that has been comprised of all the ingredients that are necessary for them to heal as adequately as possible. So taking that into consideration will be helpful when choosing a formula. One last category to consider in terms of formula choice includes fluid restrictions. If you have a patient who has a fluid restriction, such as our patient with our 1.5 liters per day, that will definitely impact your ability to choose specific formulas. Some formulas would not allow you to get enough calories, protein, and other nutrients in terms of volume just because they're more dilute than others, which would lead you to a large intake of fluid and would not allow the patient to stay within their fluid restriction. That certainly weighs heavily in terms of today's formula choice. And for this patient, we really were looking for a high protein, high calorie concentration formula to help limit the fluid that they are getting from the formula, but also provide as much goodies as we can. So for this patient today, we chose a standard high protein and high kcal formula that would help to provide all sorts of nutrients with a limited amount of fluid. So this particular formula has 2 kcals per milliliter. It also has 83.5 grams of protein per liter, 700 milliliters of free water per liter of formula, and lastly, DRI is met at 948 milliliters. We'll visit all of those pieces as we continue to work through our patient's calculations. But first, let's estimate what our patient's formula needs will be as we use this formula. For step 3, we're going to be estimating formula needs. Although our patient was indicated to be a touch overweight, I also want to ensure that she's getting enough calories throughout the day, so I'm going to stay at the high side of my kcal needs recommendation and putting our estimate here at 1700 kcals per day. If we look at the content of our formula today, we'll see that 1 milliliter has 2 kcals, and that will lead us to a total of 850 milliliters provided to this patient per day. If we want to look at how we could provide all 850 milliliters to this patient throughout the day as she's on a continuous feed, we would then need to look at the day and say in one day there's 24 hours, leading this patient to get 35 milliliters for every hour. I always like to put these little approximate signs here at the end of my equations just because this number right here is often rounded to every 5th number. Because it landed on this beautiful 35, we are going to keep it, but we're still going to walk through step 4 here just to make sure that we're reminded we always need to double check and confirm our kcals. Before moving on in our calculations, we want to confirm the formula that we'll be providing to our patient based off the rate that we have selected. So in step 3, we chose 35 milliliters per hour as our rate, which means that we are still going to use that in step 4 here. Looking at 35 milliliters per hour, there's 24 hours in the day, which will actually provide us with a total of 840 milliliters per day. With our patient getting a formula that has 2 kcals per 1 milliliter, this puts us at a kcal total of 1,680 kcals, which does fit right inside with our needs range of that 1,500 to 1,700 kcals per day. Now, before we leave to the next page, I want you to hold on to this number, the 840 mils, or if you remember, there are 1,000 milliliters per liter, which means that this also is equal to 0.84 liters. both of these numbers are going to help us with the remainder of our calculations, so let's take them with us as we move on to the next page. So if you remember from our last screen, the value that we held on to was the amount of liters per day that we provided to our patient of this formula, which was 0.84 liters. If we look over here to the makeup of our particular formula, we'll see that every liter of formula gives us about 83.5 grams of protein, which means we can use that here to then solve through and see that our patient is getting about 70.1 grams of protein per day, which, based off of what our needs are, we'll see that their patient is just getting within to that range to meet their needs. When we're talking about fluid needs for this patient, you might recall that they have a daily limit of 1.5 liters of fluid per day. Now, when we talk about fluid limits, we want to make sure that we are providing essentially as little as possible through our formula so that we have opportunity to use that fluid elsewhere. To calculate what we're using, we'll see again that our 0.84 liters per day will come into play. We can multiply that by the 700 milliliters of free water that is present in each liter of our formula, and that will lead us to a total of 588 milliliters of free water per day from our formula. Now, you may say to me, previously we've had patients that need extra fluid. Well, in terms of this patient, we don't really want to provide any additional free water flushes or things to try and get to their full 1.5 liters of their limit, because we need to also consider what fluids nursing may be providing to them. Maybe it's just IV fluids, maybe it's another kind of medication that's liquid, but we want to allow them the opportunity to do what they need to do to best treat this patient, and sometimes that means that we can't use all of the fluid allotment. We also want to consider oral fluid because oftentimes patients will be very thirsty, and asking a person to just be thirsty and not providing them even just a little smidgen of some liquid if they're safe to drink like that can be very difficult. So we want to make sure that we leave as much liquid as possible for nursing or oral liquid to be consumed, because that will help our patient to stay comfortable and of course help them to get the treatment that they need. When we're talking about micronutrients, we're really considering whether or not our patient can get to 100% of the DRI within the amount of formula that they're provided. For this particular formula, the DRI can be met at 948 milliliters, and that will give you that 100%. Now, if you remember, we're actually only providing our patient with 840 milliliters, which means we are not reaching our 100%. This means that we will likely need to consider adding in a multivitamin/mineral supplement to help them reach their 100% of DRIs, to prevent deficiencies and allow them to get the best nourishment possible during their time with us. Now that we've worked through all the calculations for this patient, we can write down our final recommendations. For this patient, we opted to use a high kcal and high protein formula, provided at 35 milliliters per hour, giving that patient a total of 840 milliliters per day of formula. In terms of the water that we're providing, we opted to do no flushes for this patient in efforts to leave as much extra fluid for nursing to use in their IV fluids, as well as the medications that they might have to take that are in liquid form. And we wanted our patient to have the opportunity to have some sort of oral liquid because many patients get kind of thirsty, and it's really difficult to tell people to just be thirsty. So if they can safely swallow, we want to leave as much fluids for them to be able to consume orally as possible. In terms of the energy that we provided, that energy total mathed out to be 1,680 kcals today. Our protein came in at about 70.1 grams. Our fluid that we provided just based off of our formula was 588 milliliters. And then we decided that we did not meet our DRI, meaning that we are going to add some multivitamin and multimineral supplementation to our plan. So I hope that this patient breakdown was helpful for you to learn a little bit more about what things to consider with a fluid-restricted patient. If you have any questions or comments, I'd love to see them in the comments box below. Please don't forget to like and subscribe to our channel so we can keep making great videos for you and help support your understanding and knowledge of nutrition support. So thanks for watching, and I'll catch you next time.